and welcome back. I'm Karen here with Kelly to be answering your questions. And this is a particularly personal one, I think, for you, Kelly. We can see that you've got the book in the back here. So I wanted to talk about the grief experience today. This wonderful book and this really community and everything that you created that went along with it. And wanted to talk to you about the origin of it. How did the grief experience get started?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm excited to talk about this. Well, the grief experience, honestly, it's always been my dream to write a grief book. I have started multiple times and then just I'm like, where do I even go with this? And then I'm like, oh, I don't have enough content. I can't do this, right? I get in my head. Um, but I use grief books all the time. I know as a teenager myself, every time I went to my grief counselor, I wanted another grief book. I wanted to understand. And but I also know that some grief books are so like specific to a different type of one specific type of loss. So then it's not really for everybody. And then I'll read a grief book and I'll be like, oh, I don't like that part. So I'm pretty picky about it. There's very few that I recommend on a regular basis, to be honest. And so a few years ago, I was invited to be part of a collaborative book called Holistic Mental Health. And Laura Mazada is the lead author, and she invited me to write in that book about grief. And so I chose to write about my mom's death. And after that, I did a couple of children's books through Brave Healer Productions. And I was like, you know what? I want to lead a book. I want a grief book. And so I sat down and I wrote down all the different types of losses and grief experiences I wanted in this book. And then I started trying to find the authors. And so the grief experience is 25 authors, all with different types of loss experiences. I actually write about pet loss in my chapter. And for those of you that don't know, this is how Karyn and I actually
Yep.
connected.
Yeah.
And that is through the grief experience. And she is one of the authors as well. So in there, we have talking about, immigration grief, infertility, traumatic loss, anticipatory grief. Really, in my opinion, I wanted this book to be whoever picks it up is going to be able to relate to at least one author in it. And I truly believe that is the case. And what's also really unique, I think, about our book is that it is not just the author's stories, but it's also a tool to help the readers. And I've actually been doing a
Yeah.
grief group this summer using those tools. And so it's really fun to be able to see those tools in action and how people are benefiting from them. And even in my individual sessions as well with my clients, I've been using a lot of the different tools. I love your tool, Karyn. I've told you multiple times that your tool has been amazing and my clients benefit from it. And I've heard so many positive stories where they've actually used your tool to
Oh,
help their relationships. And so, do you want to share a little bit about your chapter?
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. So, yeah, so I was very fortunate, and we were just talking about this before. Like, how did we actually connect? And Kelly had, I guess, posted something in a group that we're both a part of, and sort of the rest was history. But it was such a unique idea to be having all these different perspectives of grief. And you're right. I mean, there's certain books that you pick up, and there's times I'll like look at a title because I want to be, using it or utilizing it. I'm like, oh, this is for this specific loss. I guess I can't recommend it to this person. And I think the book speaks to the commonalities of grief, which is kind of what I talk about, like grief in common. Like this is what we have in common is our grief. And so there's the specific issues, but then there's also the ways that we're all connected. So my particular chapter was about improving communication because that's just something that I see being problematic for, so many people. They, come to a grief group and of course they're talking about the person that they've lost and all the challenges that go with it, but it feels like inevitably we're talking about their extended family, their coworkers, their friends, the people who don't understand, and they just feel like more and more frustrated and isolated. And so the tool is meant to basically just sort of write a letter to someone, not to everybody. We can't necessarily explain this to everybody, but there's certain people that it's like, I wish my husband understood why I'm struggling after the loss of my parent or something like that. And so the tool is, meant to be used for that, even if it's just something you write out and then use to kind of facilitate a conversation, is helpful. So yeah, I imagine doing that with all the tools because the authors had some really neat things in there and seeing that like in action has got to be pretty great.
Yeah, I really actually enjoyed that group a lot. And,
Yeah.
I think your tool, what it's so great about it is it kind of sets the foundation. They can take some sentences out, they can add some that feel right to them. And I've had some really great experiences where one of my clients just literally said yesterday what an improvement she's had in her relationship with her sister because
Mm.
of sending her that letter,
Oh, that's wonderful.
and how
That's
much
really
more
great.
supported she feels.
Yeah,
So I think sometimes people, especially grieving friends and family, they want to be able to help, but they don't know how to. And so giving them that letter kind of gives them the foundation of, okay, it's okay to talk about them. It's okay to give you some space to understand that what I need, and just really be able to verbalize that.
absolutely. Well, that's what makes that book so special is that there's tangible tools. And
Exactly.
that's one thing I'm sure we both find challenging with the work sometimes is that as helpful as I really do believe it can be for people to talk, there are times that like people want to know like what to do, like how do I put this into action, like okay, so we've talked about all this, but what am I going to do about any of it? And
Exactly.
so having something to do. So tell us a little bit about your tool, Kelly.
Yeah, so I wrote chapter one. So mine is a self care plan, and what I really wanted to start the book with that because okay, here, look at the self care plan, fill it in, see what's missing, and then go through the book. And then add to that plan, right? So you can be like, oh, I really liked that tool. Let me add that one in. Oh, and so by time you finish reading the book, your self care plan should be really nice and comprehensive. And so when you're struggling and you're feeling really down and not like you're doing well, that and so you need some extra support, you can look at that self-care plan. Okay, I need to get out in nature, maybe I need to move my body, maybe I need to reach out to this person for some support, and just kind of have that like foundation, because I think when we're grieving it's so hard to like even think about our resources and our coping skills,
Oh
because
yeah.
it just feels so overwhelming, like what am I supposed to do? Well, if you have it all written down, it's easy to go and look at it. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what's neat about the book too is that it really there's very specific and defined chapters. And we know in working with people how difficult it is to focus on a whole book. And a lot of people, even if they were like avid readers, really struggled to read. And so I think there are kind of like the two groups, like the people like you mentioned that just want to get every book they can get,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
then some that are a little bit more nervous because they're like, I used to love to read but I haven't been reading as much lately. And what's neat about this book is it really is what you can read one chapter at a time, and you kind of get a full story,
Absolutely, and
so
and
it,
they're short,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
not long,
yeah.
and I think that's a real benefit, and also now it's on Audible, so people can, if you're having a hard time reading, you can listen to it,
Hmm.
and, so that's I think a really a good thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, it brought together this like community of people, and I think even just the experience of writing the grief experience was really
Yeah,
beneficial for a lot of people. And I think it reminds everyone that there is this connection that we all have, sort of
mhm,
our own type of grief that we are working through in one way or another. So, well,
yeah,
it's a great book, and I'm glad that you started it. I know it was no easy thing, you know, that process, but I mean, I know I really loved being a part of it, and the fact that you and I made this connection is certainly, even better. So, well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you for, like I said, getting this started and keeping it going. Hopefully, everybody will actually get a chance to go check it out. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. It's easy to find.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Karen.